I'm Chuck, this is What is the Wheel, and today we're taking a break from the go-kart project to make some flat panel speakers. Wait, don't change the channel yet. I'm going to get back to the go-kart motor and the go-kart next week, but today I really wanted to make a flat panel center channel speaker for my home surround system. I really think they sound great. How good do I think they sound? Let's check it out. They sounded so good that I kept them. In fact, I replaced this Big America Venturi reference speakers because they just sounded so good. Back to the shop. You probably noticed I didn't even demo them. I'm not going to demo it because I'm recording this on a cell phone. You're watching it on a 5-year-old laptop. You're not going to be able to tell how good they sound. They're super cheap to make. Go ahead and make one or a pair and try them out. The sound is really clean, the surround effect is really great, and they're inexpensive. All you need is a piece of this foam and a driver, and you can make the speaker. There's a couple other pieces you need, but you can spend 20 bucks a speaker and have a really nice, clean sounding setup. So let's get to it and put one together. A key piece of this is the foam. This is Owens Corning. It doesn't have to be made by them, but it does need to be an extruded foam board. This stuff is super rigid and stiff. It transmits sound really well, and that's what you're looking to do. You also want to make sure that it is as flat as possible. You can see this one's got some curve to the end. In this case, it didn't matter too much because I'm going to be cutting it in half. If you're making a regular speaker out of it, you're going to use the whole panel. All right. If you looked at your board, you made sure it doesn't have any dings or nicks in it. If it does, make sure they're on the back side. Go ahead and peel off your sticker. I like to leave the sticker on the back side because it does leave a little bit of an imprint in there. You're going to want to measure it. In this case, I'm going to cut it in half. So I'm going to go ahead and measure to the halfway point. This is a 2-foot by 2-foot board. So I'm just going to get down at one end here and mark and the fire trucks are going nuts because it's super windy today, and for some reason everybody decided that they needed to burn stuff. So one of my neighbors has already set their yard on fire. And so you've got your 2 marks right here. Just take a straight edge, line your marks up. And this stuff is super easy to cut. All you need is a box cutter. And actually, you know what? I'm going to put this line back on here to make sure, because this is a long line and I want it to be as straight as possible so that it looks better. So we're going to go ahead and try not to cut our finger off. Try and hold this thing still. Okay, once you get your initial line in there, the blade should follow into that line. If you're lucky. Hopefully it does, because I only got one of these sheets with me today. Alright. Getting there. Might have a little bit of a rough finish. That's okay right now. That's going to get cleaned up. Next thing you want to do is round your corners. I like to use the Bush's black beans. I'm not sponsored by Bush's. However, Bush's would like to sponsor me. I do like their black beans. I'm going to do the same thing. You're just going to put it in the corner. Give yourself a rough line at each corner. And then flip it over and do the other side. And the reason you're doing this is because it is easier to cut halfway through each side than it is to cut all the way through one side, especially when you're trying to keep it square. Make your cuts. Place your knife with a sharper one. Sharper knife. And your first cut does not need to be super deep. You want to create a line for your knife to follow, your box cutter. You do want to keep it as straight up and down as possible so that you get a nice curve and you don't have, it gives you less work to do when you make your final cut. If you do screw it up a little bit like I did right there, don't sweat it, because you are going to sand this thing afterwards. Alright, that's our basic shape right there. Now we just need to sand it down some. This is a sanding block. This makes short work of this kind of job. You can use all kinds of stuff. You can take a piece of sandpaper and put it around a block of wood. That'll work too. You just want to sand down your sides. You're going to sand your edges, make your edges nice and rounded. And then we're going to sand the top. And this actually is the back side on this. So let's make a note of that real quick. We're going to sand all our edges and make them nice and rounded, and we're going to sand this off as well to make it look so it looks better. The final part you want to sand is the top. You can sand it with a sanding block also, but I'm going to cheat because I'm lazy and I'm going to use a power sander. One more thing, this texture where you're sanding is going to show through. So if you want it to look good, sand it the same direction the entire time, whichever you go, however you want to do, diagonal, straight up and down, crisscross, but you want to do it the same way so the pattern stays the same, because you're going to paint this and this pattern is going to show through the paint. And you're like 90% there. All that's left is to glue on your mount points and put your speaker on. Actually, it's not a speaker, it's a drop. Got your panel, back side up. You need to decide where to put the speaker now. And the rule, based on what I read on the internet, is it's a 3/5 rule, or a 2/5 rule if you like it that way. You want the speaker to be 3/5 to one side, and 3/5 from the top to the bottom, or the reverse, but you want it 3/5 of the way over in each orientation. And I already measured it and put my X mark right there, but if you were going to do this thing is 24 inches wide, so you would divide 24 by 5, which would give you 4.8, which, because we're using inches, I'm just going to say 4.75 or 4 3/4. So that would be 9.5 inches from the short side on that. And then the top is 12 inches top to bottom. So 12 is divided by 5 is 2.4, and 2.4 times 2 for our 2/5 is 4.8. 4, and I'm just same thing, I'm just going to say 4.75, which is 4 3/4 inches, because I'm working in inches. It's easier to work that way, and that's because I'm dumb. I should use the metric system. Metric system is way better, but I've used inches for 45 years. So anyway, it's 2.75 inches from the bottom, and so this is our 2/5, 3/5 spot here, just off center of the panel. And to attach this, if this was a brand new driver, it actually has adhesive on it. We'll peel off the little backing and just stick it right on there. But this is a used one. This is one of my experiment ones when I was first practicing this. So the adhesive is gone off of it. So instead I'm going to use a glue gun. I know you're thinking, a glue gun? What is this, some kind of arts and craft project? And you know what? I gotta say, you can do some pretty amazing stuff with a glue gun. I'm just going to put that on there. Stick it right on, and that part is done. Now you can see this thing has got leads on it. When you get done, you don't want your leads touching the panel. You don't want anything to touch the panel that doesn't have to. So this panel is going to have to be suspended, and that's the next thing I'll show you how to do, is make your suspension system to hold the panel up. The suspension system is pretty simple. It's just this fine, basically this stuff is paracord, except it's not fat like you usually see, and cotter pins. You're going to take all your cotter pins, just line them up. They're about even. Grab yourself a magical marker. Draw a line straight across. You can see one of them I did a practice, so I got a line on it. Like that, more or less straight across. Then you got your bendy point. You know where you're going to bend it. And all you're going to do is put it at the bend point in a vise. If you got one, if you don't, you can do it with a pair of pliers. A little easier with a vise, like that. Take a hammer. Then grab a screwdriver. Try and shove the screwdriver directly through your hand. Flare them out a little bit. There we go. You just want to spread it out just a little bit like that, so that it's got, when you glue it down, it's got some support, because it's going to have some load on it from the side when you put that string on it. And you just do that 4 times. Once you get your hangers bent, you just got to decide where you want to glue them into place. And this is how the suspension system is going to work. It's basically you're going to glue the cotter pins that you bent down to the back of the panel. And then the way I do it anyway is I have got a wooden piece of stock made of wood, and it's going to bolt to the wall and suspend the speaker just by this line. That's all that's going to be holding it up, and it, only weighs like a half a pound, so it doesn't need a lot. And I usually drill a hole in the center and mount it with a screw so that I can tilt this to get the speaker square. At the bottom, what you're going to do, same thing. You're going to have a string running between the 2 hangers, and then you're just going to have a short hanger bolted to the wall, and it's going to rest against it. The string is just going to, it's not going to be attached or anything. It's just going to rest against this little dowel you've got screwed into the wall. And so the only place that anything touches the speaker is those 3 contact points. That allows the speaker to vibrate fully and give you that good sound. I had selected my spot. You can probably see the marks right here. But after looking at it, I decided to drop it a little bit more, because I don't want the suspension system to show up at all from the front. So I'm going to mount them just a little bit lower. If you have an issue, you want these to be flat. If you look at this one right here, you can see that one's crooked. Just grab it with a pair of pliers and tweak that leg until they're both, well, look at that, tweaked it too far on my own strength. You just want to get it tweaked until it's dead, until it sits flat, because you want good contact with the back of this board. And so now we've got our these two pieces in place, I'm just going to push them down a little bit to give myself a little bit of a mark here. Like that. And I'm going to take my glue gun and groove this a little bit where these things are supposed to go. And the reason I'm doing this is to create an improved contact area so that they adhere the best. The first time I made the set of these speakers, I had a little issue with the cotter pins adhering like I wanted them to. I had one of them pop free, and I went back and did it a second time, and using this trick right here, and that worked pretty good. So I'm going to let that cure a little bit and do the same thing for the lower ones. Just create a mark, cut a little groove with the glue gun, fill that groove with glue. I know I said before this seems like, you know, arts and crafts time, but this stuff, this glue stuff, is pretty impressive. It's pretty amazing at how well it adheres. And then we're just going to let these cure a little bit, and then I'm going to go back and put in a second layer of glue, and our speaker will be done except for the paint. The easiest way I found to do the support line is to cut your line long enough to pass all the way double length, basically. Pass all the way through and then come back, and you're going to get it up in these hoops. You do not need to get it to try and get it super tight, because there was a little trick we're going to use to make it snugger. You do want to make sure your knot is tight. And we're just doing a simple knot here, and then the trick to actually getting it tight is to, on this looped side, is to just pull the loop over to the other side of the cotter pin. And just like that, so easy to do. Never goes as smoothly as it does in rehearsal. What is that from? There we go, like that. And you got nice guitar string tight, and you want that because when you're supporting this, when it's hanging, you don't want it to be super droopy. And we'll just repeat that down here. Same thing, you just want to cut it long enough that you can, oh, you also got to make sure melt your ends so it doesn't fray. Bring it around, back through. That, and then you just tie your knot. And like I said, it's better to err on being a little loose when you do this part, because you do want to get that tension in there by pushing the string back up over the top of the cotter pin hoop like that, and because you want it tight, because when you get this thing in position, you've got your two pieces. It's going to be hanging on that string there, and it's going to be resting against the string here. And this is really what allows the speaker to perform as good as it can. This is all you need for the mounting points for your suspension system. This is just some red oak. You could use any kind of wood. I had this stuff laying around. I cut it on a table saw. If you don't have a way to cut a piece like this, you can get square doweling like this from the hardware store. I had just cut it to a reasonable length. I believe this was about 8 to 10 inches here, and put 2 finish nails in it, and then bent the finish nails along the end so that the string will stay back on the nail to help the speaker float. The lower one, which is going to be positioned like this, same deal. It's got I countersunk it. You don't even have to do that. Just drill a hole that'll fit the screw. And then I added a little electrical P-hoop here to run the wires through. And this is just to keep the wires from touching the speaker when the speaker's in place. And that's really it. 2 little tiny screws. Like I said, you know, this system only weighs like a half a pound. You don't need a whole lot. If you're putting it in drywall, you want to use a drywall anchor. But other than that, this is a super straightforward system to set up. It'd take about 5 minutes to bolt it to the wall and hang a speaker from it. It's time to put on some paint. You might be tempted to spray paint. Don't do it. There is solvent in the spray paint and it will actually melt this foam. I did a little test panel here, hoping that I could just throw some spray paint on there, but it doesn't work. The last time I did one, I used oil-based paint, this stuff right here, which was Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel. Works fantastic, comes in a bunch of different colors. You don't have to paint them black, you paint them whatever color you want. Match your house, you don't like it, you can change the color of the paint, throw them away and build a brand new one because they're cheap. Doesn't take much to build them. I also use these super cheap brushes because I don't have to clean them up. When I'm done, I throw this straight in the trash. Also, I think that the cheap bristles give kind of a neat texture to the panel. And I wouldn't paint the whole back of it. I'm not planning on it. I'm just going to do that mostly to make sure I get the edge good here. I'm going to put on a coat and then go back and make sure you covered up all of your pink, because it really stands out, especially when it's black. Like I said, I'm not too worried about the back. I just want to make sure that that edge is covered up. When I paint the front, same thing when you're sanding, you want to keep that up and down texture, or so that it shows up when you're finished. It actually almost looks like the thing is fabric covered. Not bad for a first coat. Let it dry, see how it looks, and then apply a second one if we need to. 24 hours later, we're back in the shop. Yes, I'm wearing the same shirt I was wearing yesterday. That's the What is the Wheel dedication to continuity. The speaker looks great. That paint dried out to a nice semi-gloss black. It's going to look good on the wall, and we're ready to hang it. Ta-da! Installed and hooked up. Tested with one of my favorite movies, Pulp Fiction, intense dialogue, lots of great music, a great test for a center channel speaker. It worked fantastic. You hear every bit of dialogue, it's not muddy, everything is super clean, and the center channel does not overpower the rest of the stereo. So overall a win. As always, like, subscribe, comment, good or bad. Have a great day.